When I first entered the bunker, I wondered what would become of my life, what would become of myself and those around me as we were hidden away in the dark. I never thought it would turn out this way. The first few months were what we expected: shitty food, dark claustrophobic interiors, and a constant fear of what was happening in the world above. Sharing a vault with 1,000 strangers, with a war raging above, wiping out what we knew as civilization, took its toll on our minds. No one was happy in a scenario like this, but we had to play the hand we were dealt. I think we all had to remind ourselves that it wasn't so bad, that the life we were living was still life, and just from that, we had it better than the rotting leftovers of humanity above. It wasn't easy for us to adjust, but as time went on, we gradually evolved to our new habitat, and with enough time and effort, our lives became somewhat normal once again. Nothing like what we used to have, but we'd make do. That's all we could do in the end. We all worked hard as a community, and eventually, I was among a group of people who I could call friends. But that was when the news hit. The Overseer made his announcement to the Vault. If the Vault's life support systems were to remain functional, then we must offer one person as tribute, a life for the safety of ours. We all thought it was a joke. We thought we misheard. We thought he was lying. He confirmed that the safety of our vault has a price, and that this wage was agreed upon by himself to allow us entry, and to allow us the safety of living out the rest of our days in peace. These were the terms given to him by the vault's manufacturer, Vault-Tec. He accepted. We came to the vault to seek safety and to survive, and now we were supposed to be part of a game in which we wanted no part of. A decision would need to be made exactly 1 year after our entry. Silence fell over us like a mist in the following days. We all looked at each other, wondering who would have the honor. Many still had doubts. Many still refused to participate in his game. How could the rest of us live, knowing that someone else had to die for it? I didn't feel like I should have the right to say who should live or die, especially for my sake. However, when a candidate was found to fill the role, I felt it more than just, as did my fellow Vault dwellers. The Overseer himself was elected. They carted him off for his execution. It was discovered that there was even a chamber below his office that could carry out the deed. He cried like a child as he descended that staircase. The door was sealed behind him. After sentencing him to his death, we awaited the next few days for something. Anything. We got nothing. The vault continued to function as it was intended to. As sinister as it sounds, I think we were all expecting a congratulations. Or something. Something that told us that our lives were spared. But it was over. No one could reverse it, change it, or do anything. I guess we all accepted the blood on our hands, even those who stood by in silence wanting no part in the matter. Months passed, and in that time our minds began to calm. I tried to convince myself that we had only done what we needed to do, and that it was for a just and noble cause. What's the sacrifice of a single life, a bad life even, for the lives of 1,000? But someone was still dead. Someone had died so that I could live. I didn't even know his name. It took some time adjusting once again, but we never forgot. Until one day there was a stash of holotapes discovered. All of them made out to the previous Overseer himself. When I discovered the contents, I felt my heart sink. There was one small detail we never knew. We did need a sacrifice for the guaranteed safety of our lives, that we all knew. But what we didn't know in the beginning was that it would only buy us time for a single year, meaning that if we were to ensure long-term survival, more lives had to be given up. The Overseer was one thing, but another life? How does one even get to determine that sort of thing? How could we choose that one person who should die so that we could all live? Not everyone in the vault was perfect, but that wasn't a good enough reason for them to die for it. Not only that, but this trend would need to continue, year after year after year. And so it did. Time after time after time, we sacrificed member after member. It was decided that we would follow in the footsteps of the original. An Overseer shall be selected from our votes, and they would allow us to keep our lives by losing theirs. After over a decade of madness, and the most extreme example of a popularity contest, parties were formed, campaigns were created for what would become an all-out war for the Vault residents. No one wanted to be elected for the Overseer, no one wanted to vote, but we were forced. To ensure we did, we had to sign every terminal entry. Everyone knew who voted for who. It tore families apart, brother against brother, a mother against son. Despite the brutal method, it was oddly effective. It kept us alive. Of course, we hadn't decided if it was worth it, but it didn't stop us from voting on those fucking terminals. Campaigns lasted all year round, many targeting a single person. Posters were created, vote for Pete, vote for Jacqueline. Some went further, creating bright, colourful adverts for the demise of those who they were against. The parties with the most members had a monopoly over the vault. Out of fear, their followers would vote against their wishes and send another poor soul to their doom. The wars continued over the years to come, until one day, it was discovered that a simple vote was a less effective way of removing any undesirables from the vault. The murder was no longer kept to the chamber. It wouldn't be uncommon to find people with their throats slit in their sleep, their heads bashed in brutally with whatever the other could find. There was a spree of murders that hit one of the wings of the vault. The culprit? Catherine Stone, one of the lead politicians. Many questioned the truth of the propaganda against her from the Justice Bloc political party, claiming she was an adulterer, a murderer. But it was in a political interview when the truth was revealed. Kate had killed several residents by her own accord. She murdered them in cold blood, knowing the consequences for her actions. There was no criminal justice system here. No cell or punishment. Just the role that kept everyone in place. Suffice it to say that she was voted to become the new Overseer. There was one small problem. One we didn't account for. While it was true that the Overseer was the one to be sacrificed, they still had to perform the duties of an actual Overseer. Her first change? She abolished the voting system entirely, replacing it instead with a randomized draw system. A fair, randomly generated name would come up with the next sacrifice. In her words, it was to ensure complete impartiality and fairness. We played right into her game. I had never received a vote. Not once. I never stood a chance of being voted against, but now, given all the death and chaos from the last years, the population of the vault had run low. I figured there had to be fewer than 200 residents left. I didn't like my chances of being picked. I had worked hard to give a balance of blending in and being likeable just enough to be glanced over at every voting party. This new system didn't sit well with me, nor many others. Many of the remaining political parties would no longer get a say in who would be next. Their power had been stripped from them. And with that, an all-out war broke out across the vault. The armory was raided, and many fortified the doors and hallways. After obtaining power over the vault, many would be damned if they would be given up by chance alone. A rebellion formed and was fought for months on end. No one was concerned with what started it all to begin with. Surviving each night became the priority. The Justice Bloc was slowly wiped out along with the other political parties. In a final act of rebellion, the Overseer's headquarters, which led to the chamber, was sealed and locked. If they weren't to survive, then no one was. At this point, the dozen or so remaining residents died off, either from starvation, suicide, or from tearing each other's throats out. There was just myself, and a handful of others. Enough was enough, and to say that was long overdue was an understatement. There would be no more. We would not sacrifice another person to this vault, even if we could. I didn't want to live with it, and neither did the rest. We waited. We waited for the day we would lose our life support. We weren't sure what form that would take. Would they shut off the water? Turn off our oxygen? I wanted to die anyway, with all that had happened. In my final days, I discovered something new. The rumours about Catherine had been true. She offered her body to the members of the Justice Bloc in return for her husband's life, Nathan Stone. He had been under attack from their political parties for years. It was a miracle he survived as long as he did. She was raped and beaten by the other parties, all because of the system we had put in place. In the end, Nathan still received the most votes. In a final desperate attempt at saving his life, she went on a killing spree, murdering any and all Justice Bloc members she could. She didn't want the same to happen to anyone else. Her way of altering the vote to a random name draw could have saved the lives of many who lived in fear. But in the end, it was all for nothing. On what was to be our final day, there was no new overseer, no new tribute. We sat alone, surrounded by our fallen friends and families. The flickering light bulb above slowly began to fade. I closed my eyes and wondered if the vaults were ever really meant to save anyone.
Congratulations, citizens of Vault 11. You have made the decision not to sacrifice one of your own. You can walk with your head held high, knowing that your commitment to human life is a shining example to us all. And to make that feeling of pride even sweeter, I have some exciting news. Despite what you were led to believe, the population of Vault 11 is not going to be exterminated for its disobedience. Instead, the mechanism to open the main vault door has now been enabled, and you can come and go at your leisure. But not so fast. Be sure to check with your overseer to find out if it's safe to leave. Here at Vault Tech, your safety is our #1 priority.